Welcome to Codex, a history of video games. My name is Tyler Osby.
And I'm Mike Coletta.
And this week we continue our coverage of Metroidvania. We're going to work on the second half of that genre, the Vania half. This is our second foray into the Castlevania games. So where are we at, Mike? Tell us the storyline. Where are we at?
Yeah, so today we are finally abandoning the NES. There are no more Castlevania games to talk about in the 8-bit generation, okay? But we're going to focus on the 3 titles for the Game Boy. So I am going to be doing a pretty significant time jump with the last game, but if you just stick with me and stay in there with me, we're going to be okay. All right?
So when you say time jump, are you talking like real life time jump or storyline?
I mean
plotline?
Real life time jump, because between the second game I talk about and the third game, it's like 6 years.
Okay.
So it's a lot of stuff happened in that 6 years, and we'll get to it when we get to that third game. I'll explain it more in detail. But for this game, the first one we're going to talk about is called Castlevania the Adventure. And here are your grime facts. It was developed by Konami. It was released on the Game Boy, just normal Game Boy, in Japan on October 27th, 1989, in North America on December 15th, 1989, the PAL region in 1991, and then it was re-released in Japan on September 25th, 1997, in the Konami Game Boy Collection Volume 1. And that had something called Super Game Boy utilization. And I don't know much about the Super Game Boy.
I had a Super Game Boy.
Oh, tell me all about it.
Back in the day. So a game that was enhanced for the Super Game... I'll back up a little bit. The Super Game Boy was a oversized cartridge that you could plug into your Super Nintendo that also had a slot for a Game Boy cartridge. So you could play your Game Boy games on your TV. It was awesome and the best way to play Pokemon. Super Game Boy enhanced games had... They usually had some color information in there, not like a full color. It didn't basically make it a Super Nintendo game. But they did also added like borders around the game, because the Game Boy game doesn't take up the whole screen because of the way the Game Boy game is shaped. And so they had a bunch of built-in borders that were pretty cool, but if you had an enhanced game, it would come with its own borders. They would be themed for it.
Nice.
And actually, I think it's not true. I should say it's not true that well, never mind. We can talk about that if we talk about the Super Game Boy. That's a whole nother thing.
We could probably do an episode on the Super Game Boy.
We should do Super Game Boy episode.
Throw it on the list, which is now like 800 things long. Okay, but the game Castlevania the Adventure also came out on the Game Boy Color in Europe in the year 2000 as part of their Konami Game Boy Collection Volume 1. So the European version had that, not the American version. Number of copies sold, I actually found sales data for this only because, according to the Castlevania Wiki, which is where I got a lot of information today, not Wikipedia, but the Castlevania Wiki, which is actually a really good resource. In 1991, Konami actually released a sell sheet when they released the next game, Castlevania 2, Belmont's Revenge, and that sell sheet showed that Castlevania the Adventure was the first Game Boy title to sell nearly 2.5 million copies.
Wow.
Yeah, so this game sold really well. The genre or gameplay style was action platformer. It had no accolades, and we're going to explain why. The average time to complete was 1.5 to 3 hours, and there is no Metacritic score because it's an old game, but the site Game Rankings, which is also an aggregator, has it as a score of 55%, which is not very good to mixed reviews. The plot of this game and the next game we talk about involves Christopher Belmont, and chronologically this is taking place in 1576 AD, and this is the generation before Simon Belmont, which are the games we spoke about on the NES. And once again, the player is straight up, you're just trying to kill Dracula, but now you're Christopher Belmont. It's kind of like a redone version, but a different generation, but it's very similar story to the first Castlevania game. The major differences comes in its gameplay. And that's because there are no sub-weapons at all in this version of Castlevania. Candles don't drop hearts. Instead, they drop gold pieces, which just increases your high score. The whip can be upgraded. The first time, it's called the Morning Star, and the second time, it's a fireball whip. They shoot fireballs. But when you get hit by an enemy, you lose those upgrades, which is kind of rough.
Okay, so it's like Mario where you get power up, but then if you get hit, you Regress. Okay.
Yeah. And the diagonal stairs are no longer present. And that's actually a thing in all of the Game Boy versions of these games. Instead, you're climbing ropes this time. And I wonder if there's some sort of hardware thing.
Like they couldn't do diagonal things easily.
Yeah,
maybe.
Something
now
along
that I
the
think
lines.
about it, I don't think Super Mario Land had any like diagonal things going on.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I mean that would make a lot of sense when I think about it. Because they talk about it more later on down the line here, but it really is just saying, they used ropes instead of stairs, and I mean, they were pretty limited by the hardware for this, which was another thing we're going to get to. But the cool thing about Adventure that actually makes it kind of unique is they added a bunch of new enemy types. There are Night Stalkers, which throw scythes. There are giant rolling big eyeballs. There are Panaguchi, which are these fire-spitting monsters. And they've added some new stuff, which sounds really cool. But they made all these new enemies for this game. But why did it get a 55%? You ask on that game rankings. Why was it kind of destroyed in reviews? If you wanted to do some sort of YouTube hype video, if you wanted to make clickbait, you could do that.
55% worst Castlevania ever?
Question mark, exclamation point.
Add an arrow to the thumbnail, just anywhere. You just need an arrow somewhere on it.
Don't forget to smash that like button. Okay, so the major problem, and I would say major gameplay complaint with this game, is speed. Apparently, Christopher Belmont is the least athletic of all of the Belmonts. He moves like a turtle, and he jumps like one too. As in, he jumps, and then he just abruptly falls immediately. Like, not your Ninja Turtles, like a normal turtle. It's not going great.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah, and in a platforming game where you're supposed to jump, that makes things a little difficult. And this game is notoriously hard for that reason. The game has 4 stages, which sounds like not a lot, but they are very, very long. And the game starts out in an outside area, and then you go into the cave, and then the last 2 stages take place in Dracula's castle. I mean, this is very much your classic Castlevania format. You're going into the castle to fight Dracula. There's not a lot of plot going on there. There will be more plot in the next game, though. So I couldn't find really any interviews about the game with any of the game's creators, and so this one kind of looks like the black sheep of the Castlevania family, if I had to pick a game. Not as bad as the third game, which we'll talk about, but this game definitely was not looked upon very well. But I did find this funny miscommunication involving their marketing, and it involved the protagonist, Christopher Belmont. So when Castlevania the Adventure came out in North America, the back of the box had the synopsis written in a way that incorrectly implied that you are playing as Simon Belmont.
Oh no.
So if you bought this game, you would think it is like a sequel of the NES Castlevania and Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest. And then to complicate things even further, none of the text on the box, manual, or in-game instructions, like the dialogue boxes in the game, say you are Christopher Belmont.
How does anybody know? How do we even know that today? Some say we never found out.
Yeah, so and it gets even worse. You ready? The official Game Boy Nintendo Player's Guide also incorrectly refers to the protagonist as Simon in the magazine ad.
Oh my gosh.
So when this sequel for this game, Belmont's Revenge, was released, it finally said this was Christopher Belmont. Now, if you lived in Japan, you knew this was Christopher Belmont. It is just the American version of this game was, for some reason, they just had a glitch in the matrix and they missed on the marketing and they just didn't get Christopher Belmont's name right, which is kind of odd. So you have slow gameplay and plot confusion. And there's a lot of things going on in Castlevania the Adventure that are just not great because of it. And to a lot of fans, this is the worst in the series. But what I want to know is if you have played this game, will you tell me about it? Because you can email us at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com, or if you want to message in the Discord that you've played it. I am curious if people played the first Castlevania game on Game Boy. It sounds Like, it's really hard to play. There was a 2009 remake of the game called Castlevania the Adventure Rebirth, and this version added sub-weapons. It changed the stage count and kind of stretched them out from 4 to 6, so it didn't feel like the levels were so long, but it was still unforgivingly punishing, I think, as far as like difficulty goes. That version, by the way, the Adventure Rebirth, was released on the Wii as a WiiWare title. So I don't know if that's still around. So
I don't think so. They shut down all the online stuff for the original Wii. So only way to get this one is to sail the high seas, perhaps.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So I was like, the only way now you should play this game, if you want to play it really bad, is it is involved in the Castlevania Anniversary Collection, which I still haven't picked up because I want it on Switch and I want to buy it on sale. So
is it the original Game Boy version or is it the WiiWare version?
It says it's called Castlevania the Adventure.
Okay, not Rebirth.
Not Rebirth. So I'm assuming it's the original, which is interesting because I wonder what that looks like on a Switch nowadays.
Yeah.
It might look kind of weird. So we'll move on to the next game, though. Castlevania 2 Belmont's Revenge. Once again developed by Konami. This came out on the Game Boy in Japan on July 12th, 1991. In North America on August 1991. Europe, November 92. Once again, this one's a part of the Konami Game Boy Collection Volume 3 on February 19th, 1998. And then the EU got their Game Boy Color version on July 26, 2000. So, number of copies sold, have no idea on this one. It is just not mentioned. We don't know. Once again, an action platformer. No groundbreaking awards or achievements. The average time to complete from howlongtobeat.com is 2 to 3 hours, and there is no Metacritic score, but this one did have a Game Rankings aggregator score of 84%. So this is much better than the first game.
That's good. It sounds like maybe they learned some of their lessons from the first one.
They did. They did for this one. So the plot takes place in 1591. That is 15 years after the first game, Castlevania the Adventure, and though this is a direct sequel in the timeline for this. And the first major improvement of this game is the plot. So I'm going to sum it up here. Essentially, you are Christopher Belmont. Now the world knows that now. And you have a son named Soleil Belmont. It's actually Soleil or Soleil. I saw it spelled both ways. I don't know which is correct. And you have a coming-of-age party. No, but not you. Your son, because you still play as Christopher Belmont, but your son, Soleil, has a coming-of-age party. And it's really, the town in Transylvania is just, it's bumping. It's a party.
Oh, we're all excited about
We're all excited about
party.
it. But then, guess what? Dracula's not dead, because he's never really dead, and he turns Soleil into a demon.
Dang it!
You do. Yeah, so now you have to go fight Dracula, and you got your son who's a demon. So you got to go solve the problem. And what they do with this one is they actually make it so you have to go into 4 separate castles, and each castle has like a thing associated with it. So it's kind of like temples in Zelda a little bit, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so the castles are air, plant, earth, and crystal. And you can complete them in any order, so it's a lot like Mega Man, which in that way. But it's important to note that even though it's a vast improvement, the gameplay in this first game, like it's actually got a good plot, and it's got like this Mega Man style where you can beat anything in any order. You're still, like Christopher Belmont, suffering from a case of the turtles still. He is still very slow, and that is because of the limitations of Game Boy hardware. So... Yeah, it's kind of a bummer. If you got this game on Game Boy, it's rough. And we won't hold that against Christopher Belmont, okay? They did put sub-weapons in the game in this version. Granted, there are only 2 of them. They are the Holy Water, and they are axes. If you play this game in Japan, you would have crosses instead of axes, but because of religious iconography in video games in America, Nintendo chose to change them to axes. And the axes are cool because you can throw them in like an arc, much like a hammer bro in Mario, and they go through walls, so you can like pick enemies off that way, which is pretty cool. I think it's pretty neat. The development of this game, there wasn't much information on this. Once again, the only thing I could really find about development is, once again, Tom Dubois, who did the box art for a lot of Castlevania games, once it did this one, and it's just some really good cover art, and it made me realize that I feel like cover art in video games like has kind of like, I don't want to say gone hill, but gone digital. You know, I like the old painted box arts, Yeah.
They don't have as much of that these days.
Yeah, I'm a big fan, and maybe I sound like an old man, but hey, It's fine. So, yeah, but that's pretty cool. Like, this game was way better received. You're still slow, but because it had an actual plot and because it had this Mega Man style system of being able to choose where you go, it was way better. Not great, but still way better. But now we are going to talk about the final game on Game Boy, and that is called Castlevania Legends. And there are some real controversies with this game, and I'm excited to. We're probably going to spend most of the rest of the episode talking about the controversies with this game, and it might get a little political, but we're going to go there. I think we got to
bring on the drama.
We got some hot gossip to talk about, and I feel like we have to go there because I ran across it and I was like, we have to talk about this. But let's do the grime facts first. So first, this is not just Konami this time. This was actually developed by a smaller subsect of Konami called the Konami Computer Entertainment Nagoya. I believe the Nagoya is where it was made. Published by Konami, though. Released on Game Boy on, once again, jumping ahead, November 27th, 1997 in Japan.
That's a pretty big jump.
Yeah, if you were in America, you got it in 1998, so it was like 7 years later. And the EU also got it in 98. I couldn't find any sales data. This genre or gameplay style is still action platformer, no groundbreaking achievements. It takes 2 to 3 hours to beat. There's really no Metacritic scores, no game ranking score. It's just kind of like an oddity. I couldn't really find a lot of info about this game or reviews of this game, you know, because I don't know if you've noticed, but they've really scrubbed the old internet of those old video game websites that had like the reviews on there. They're not there anymore.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, so it's hard to find them. Sometimes you come across like a web archived article, which I think I found one, but it just didn't really have any info in there that I could use. So for this one, chronologically, because we're doing chronologies for this one, it's not as confusing as Zelda, but it does do something weird. This game was supposed to be the origin story of the entire Castlevania series. It was supposed to take place in 1450 AD. You play as Sonia Belmont. You are the first vampire hunter of your clan. You develop mystical powers in your 17th year, and you're trained by your grandfather until he perishes when Dracula's minions attack your ancestral home. And then Sonia goes out to kill Dracula, meets his son, Alucard, and then you do some more shenanigans and you fight Dracula. This game was designed as the first game in the series timeline, but then it was declared non-canon and kind of thrown to the wayside because of a game called Castlevania Lament of Innocence for the PS2 in 2003. And we're going to talk more about that when we get to the development section. But gameplay-wise, this game actually sounds pretty cool. You're a platformer, so I'm not going to elaborate on that too much. But there are some major changes to this game. First, the game has 6 timed stages, which each end in boss battles. And Sonia can now crawl, so this lets you get more like precision control because you'll move slower. There are no sub-weapons in the game, but bosses drop something called soul weapons. So after you kill a boss, you get one of 6 soul weapons. And those soul weapons are wind, which freezes your enemies for a short time, ice, which refills Sonia's health bar, fire, which kills or damages all enemies on screen, the Saint power, which fires out a wave of energy that shoots through anyone in its path, the magic power that destroys an enemy and nullifies its projectile attack. So this one essentially is like, if you can't dodge the attack, you can hit an enemy with it. And so even though you'll get hit, it won't do anything to you, which I thought was a kind of a cool skill. You can select the soul weapons by hitting the select button on the Game Boy. So it's like a little sub menu, which I think is pretty cool. And since this game came out a significant time after the last Game Boy game, which was in 1991, and we're in 1997, this game was actually heavily influenced by a game we haven't talked about yet called Castlevania Sympathy of the Night, which Symphony of the Night is like the Castlevania game of Castlevania games to most people.
That's the one everybody loves. That came out, I want to say, like 96.
Yeah, so it was very shortly after this Game Boy game came out. So there are a lot of things that take from that game. For example, the game has multiple paths that can be chosen, which often lead to like a special item, but there's only one correct route that actually takes you to the end of the stage. So you'll hit like dead ends and stuff. This stage actually has a hidden stage in stage 5. The game has a hidden stage in stage 5, not the stage. Stages and stages. It's a stageception in Moment.
Whoa.
No, but there's a hidden stage in stage 5. It's called the Cathedral. And if you want the special ending, there is a special ending in this game. You have to get the item from the secret stage, which I think is pretty cool. The game's regular weapon, the whip, once again, vampire killer, can be upgraded, and you can collect crystals that upgrade it by hitting candles. There's also a light mode when you start the game. It's called light mode, and you just start with a fully upgraded whip, which I think is a pretty cool idea. Like, yeah,
nice.
It's just like, here, we'll just give you all this stuff. Who cares?
Is this the same whip that is then used by later members of the Belmont clan?
Yes. If this were canon, this is you getting your grandfather's whip, vampire killer, and becoming the first vampire hunter as Sonia. So unlike the previous Game Boy Castlevania titles too, just to continue on with the gameplay, you actually do not lose any power-ups if you're hit. Like if you upgrade your whip, it stays with you. Which is kind of neat. And it can actually like launch fireballs. Like it's pretty crazy as you go along. Yeah. So it's, and once again, this game also shows, even in 1997, they were using ropes instead of staircases. So it must be something involving Game Boy hardware that they just can't do staircases.
Can't do diagonals, apparently.
Yeah, something like that. And in the Japanese version, you can actually save your game. There's no password saves.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
put a battery in there.
This is where we're getting into some weird, we've never really got into like political and mucky waters, and I don't think this is that political. This is more of like, I'm going to call it a basic human decency issue. That's what I'm going to call it. But I actually found this, and we have to read this verbatim. I think this is from, there's nothing about the development in this game, but there is a lot behind the reasoning that this game was essentially shut and put away. For example, you can't find this game anywhere. It's not on the Castlevania 50th Anniversary Collection. And it's because this game is considered non-canon, and I have some more to read about it from the Castlevania Wiki. So I'm just going to read this verbatim. First, I'm going to read what's going on. So, quote, in 2001, Igarashi, and that is Koji Igarashi, who is the director that made the next Castlevania games after 2001, made a controversial move by removing certain Castlevania games from the official Castlevania timeline and previously revised the history of the Belmont clan by writing Castlevania Lament of Innocence. So Koji Igarashi is essentially the head of Castlevania Lament of Innocence. The removed games include Castlevania Legends, Castlevania 64, Castlevania Legacy of Darkness, and Castlevania Circle of the Moon. He stated his reasons for removing the games were intended to clean up the Castlevania continuity. Recently, though, in latest timeline, included in pre-order copies of Portrait of Ruin, all games removed from the timeline have been replaced as side stories, except for Castlevania Legends. So this is from Electronic Gaming Monthly interview.
Okay.
But TLDR, Koji Igarashi made Castlevania Lament of Innocence. He made the decision to make all those games not part of the canon, and then he brought every game back except for Castlevania Legends. And now I'm going to read, for the full context, the interview that Koji Igarashi did in 2003 with Electronic Gaming Monthly. And I'm just going to single out the part that pertains to this game. They're talking about Castlevania Legends. Electronic Gaming Monthly says, would you make a Castlevania with a female main character? Igarashi says, there are difficult problems with that. As a gamer, I think that you become one with the character, and since Castlevania has a lot of male players, it's natural to have male characters. In Rondo of Blood, Maria was a silly, cute aside, but you still had Richter to make it serious. Plus, Mr. Hagihara, the director, had a playful sense of humor. He worked on Sympathy as well, and he made the telescope part where if you pan over to the left, you can see a little mouse, and also where Alucard can sit down on the chair and prop his feet up. And then EGM says, after Tomb Raider, don't you think a female character is more acceptable? And Igarashi goes on to say, it's possible, I guess, although I purposefully left the Sonia Belmont character from Castlevania Legends for Game Boy Color out of the official Castlevania chronology. And he uses laughs. Usually the vampire storyline motif, females tend to be sacrificed. It's easier to come up with weak feminine characters. I'll think about it more in the future, though. It's tough to fit female hero into the early history of Castlevania, but as you move into the modern day, females can more easily become a hero. So, there's a lot to unpack here.
That's pretty flimsy.
Yeah.
If you ask me.
And I read this, in full disclosure, I messaged it to Tyler, this is messed up, right? Because it feels pretty messed up. Again, just under the assumption that you can't have a female protagonist because if you're not female, you can't identify that way. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I feel like, yeah, to a certain extent, you want to play a video game and you want to feel like you're the character, but that never really stopped me. In that case, if you really cared about that, he would make the Castlevania lead character a silent protagonist that doesn't have a name.
Yeah, and or give you the option.
Yeah, or give you the option to pick a male or female character. It just seems like a really weak reason to pull a game out. I mean, yeah, if you don't want it to be the origin story because you want to remake the origin story, just make it a side story. But it just feels weird.
It feels weird to make the game and then pull it out basically because she's a female protagonist and be like, oh, that's not believable. You're like, well, it's a game about vampires and magic, so.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. That's another thing that really grinds my gears when people talk about that, because I have a couple friends that will not play video games if the protagonist is female, and they're like, it's not realistic. I'm like, this game is about vampires or whatever. It just makes no sense to me. So I thought it's important to share this. I don't want to get on my podcasting opinions high horse, but I think this is pretty messed up.
I agree.
So I felt like it's important to share. If you disagree with me, or I also understand the mindset of this guy wants to design a story in his way, so that's fine. But saying that you can't make a serious story with a female protagonist is a little ridiculous.
I agree.
So that's what I was getting at there. So that was the hot take political section, hot gossip, Codex History of Video Games episode, I guess. And so I think as far as legacy of these Game Boy Castlevania titles go, they had it pretty rough. I wanted to kind of make them have their own episode to give them their time to shine. And I obviously think Castlevania the Adventure was the weakest in the series, because they just couldn't do a lot and they didn't think they needed to do a lot maybe. But Belmont's Quest and Castlevania Legends really tried to do something cool with the Game Boy titles, so I think they should be celebrated in that way. But because they really were crippled by technology. It's just interesting going from last week where we talked about Metroid for Game Boy.
Yeah, and how it was not crippled by the technology, and in fact, that made it better in some ways because of the restrictions they had to work around.
Yeah, and then this week we talk about Castlevania for Game Boy, where it's all messed up by the hardware. And I wonder if that has more to do with the fact that we have Konami, which is an independent studio, and Nintendo, who has made this hardware and they know how to use it best. Maybe that's what's going on.
Yeah, maybe.
But I just wanted to mention that, and I wanted to give these games their time to shine. And I wanted to show that even though it was 2003, people were saying really messed up stuff about video games and women. So, yeah, because it's not okay. I'm laughing because I'm uncomfortable. But I felt like it's important to state that this was going on because it is history. It's there. Mm-hmm. It's a thing. Mm-hmm. So with that, Tyler, what you been playing?
This week, I've been playing Modern Warfare 3. I'm going to finally finish it today. I've just been chipping away at it 20 minutes at a time. So even though I know this is a very short game, I haven't been putting tons of time into it. I've been watching my partner play Uncharted Lost Legacy, speaking of games with female protagonists. She's having a great time. She's played all the other Uncharted games, so this is the last one, and then we will say goodbye to Nathan Drake and Chloe Frazier and all of those characters.
Goodbye,
forever.
PlayStation Indiana Jones.
That's right. Goodbye, Dude Raider.
I'm going to say that as the whole series is that it's just all PlayStation Indiana Jones. They could have called it that.
That's pretty much it. That's all it is. And then some more Spider-Man Miles Morales, and I'm excited to start Persona 5 Strikers, hopefully sometime this week. I'm trying to hold off until I finish Spider-Man, hold myself accountable, and then I think I'm going to move on to either Persona 5 Strikers or Bravely Default 2. I haven't made a decision yet. What about you? What have you been playing, Mike?
Oh, well, I mentioned Bowser's Fury last week, right? Did I beat that? I said it.
I think so.
I think I said it on the Discord, but I beat Bowser's Fury, the one half of the Super Mario collection, the 3D
How was
world.
that?
It was really fun. I really like Bowser's Fury. I think it was short enough and sweet enough that the gameplay mechanic didn't get annoying, because like every 20 minutes or so, the world changes and Bowser comes in, and it's like, if you're not prepared for it, it can really screw up the game. Or you could be in a situation where you're waiting for it because you need to get a secret and you have to wait for it to happen. It might be 10 minutes though instead of 20. I think it might be a shorter interval, but that was really fun. I have also picked up a game in my backlog because I'm really trying to go through my backlog now, and I started playing Golf Story, which is...
I heard such good things about that.
It's very similar to the 1999 Game Boy Advanced Mario Golf game that has the amazing RPG elements to it. And so I started playing that again. I kind of started it like months and months and months ago, and then I picked it up again, and it's super fun to just like lay in my bed and play that game, and it feels really good. And it's not terribly hard, but you do have to think for a little bit because they don't like hold your hand. There's no like quest markers or anything, so you got to like talk to people and figure it out, which I think is kind of neat. That game was super fun. And then I've been playing a little bit of Destiny, but not a ton. I don't really care about like farming stuff or anything like that. I'm not doing that kind of stuff, but I am just trying to play the main story content for each season, and that's fun enough for me. That's about it though for things I've been playing, I think. And I've been playing Super Mario 3D World with my girlfriend, and it's been super fun. And we're on world 6 now, which is cool. And it just gets kind of chaotic, which I like. But it also is funny because it's chaotic and you lose lives, but if you get a game over, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They just give you 5 more lives. So it's like, why even have lives if that's the case? But it's enjoyable. And yeah, so we got some emails to read. You want to read this email?
Yeah, let's jump in here and read the old email. This is from Peter. The email subject is Generation Jumps and Story. Peter says, "Hey guys, I'm finally listening to the last few episodes, and I wanted to weigh in on which series transitioned well into later consoles. One of the worst generational transitions was definitely Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic's gameplay from the 2D era isn't very easy to adapt into 3D, so I can give Adventure a pass on the questionable gameplay, though there are some fan games that do this really well using Saturn-era tech, which I will send more info on in a follow-up email. The weird cutscene animations, bad voice acting, and janky physics speaks to the lack of familiarity with the Dreamcast hardware on the part of Sonic Team at the time, and the awful menus just seem lazy. While I don't like Sonic Adventure 2 much either, it does have a level of polish that Sonic Adventure 1 needed, especially given Sega's situation at the time. In response to Burger Champ's question from last week, I think gameplay is a bit more important than story, though there are games that are mechanically fine or even fun that I stopped playing because of a bad story." Peter.
Oh, that's a good point, Peter. Yeah, that's true. Bad story will pull me out, even if the gameplay is fun. It's a balance of both. That's the answer to the question. But
it's true, because a bad story is worse than no story, right?
Yeah, and I think we've seen developers on both sides. This goes back to Masters of Doom, the whole like engine gameplay elements versus the art style direction that John Romero wanted to go in. And the answer is it's a balance of both, but you do need both to be good, I think. But also, if you don't have gameplay, it's not really a game anymore, is it?
Yep,
so
that's true. It's just a movie, which, those are fine too.
It's a walkthrough movie, which is popular. It's a popular genre because I watched your girlfriend play the Detroit Become Human, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that game is super cool, and it's very much like not a game as much as like you're walking through this story, which I think is neat.
Yeah, you make choices and you can fail at times too, and the storyline changes if you fail. So,
that's true.
It's pretty interactive, I think.
Yeah, it's fun.
But
I just can't stand a QuickTime event. That's why I have
fair.
a hard time playing those games. I'm just like, when I see a QuickTime event, there was a while in Call of Duties where they'd end the campaigns with QuickTime events, and I'm like, why are you doing this? Just make it unrealistic. Give the guy a health meter and have me shoot it down and have like boss phases or something. Just like, don't make me do this, please. Don't make me press X in a certain time and then B or whatever. So that's a good point though, Peter. Thank you for sharing. And Tyler will now defend Sonic Adventure. Go.
I was going to say, I got to defend Sonic Adventure 1. No, I can't really defend it. It's not good. I still love it, but it's not good. Sonic Adventure 2 is a little bit better because they get rid of the open world. Those games are not great. But the Chow raising simulator where you raise Chows like Tamagotchis is very cool. And very fun, and it was a really good use of the Sega Dreamcast's VMU with a little screen in it, because you could load a Chow up onto your little your little VMU, and then you could take it somewhere with you, kind of like a Game Boy, and take care of your Chow and level it up and like play little mini games. And then when you bring it back, then your Chow would be leveled up and you could win the races and the sumo fights and stuff. It was fun.
That is cool.
That part was sweet. But otherwise, yeah, no, those games are not good.
I have a game that nostalgically also I love, even though I played it and I realize it's a terrible game now, which was the Sega Genesis 7-Up Sprite dot game, or 7-Up dot
Cool
game.
Spot?
Cool Spot.
Ah.
I loved Cool Spot as a kid. I played it religiously, and I loved this game. I loved it so much. And then in college, I had a friend get one of those off-brand Sega Genesis. You plug the cartridge in, and it still plays it, things. And I was like, you have to get the 7-Up dot game, Cool Spot. And he ordered it on like eBay and had it shipped to him. And we played it for like 10 minutes and was like, this game is terrible. And I felt so bad. But and what's funny in my heart though, I'm still like, it's so fun. It's just the art style is cute and you shoot little 7-Up bubbles at people and it's fun. But yeah. So if you want to get a hold of us and send us an email, you can email us at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. We would love your feedback. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. You can tweet at us. I am at MeColetta. Tyler is at SneakerElf, ELPH. And I think that about covers everything. Right, Tyler? Do we have any scoop on what's going on next week?
Nope. It's a surprise.
Surprise.
Gonna be more Metroid, probably.
Surprise, but not a surprise. All right. Well, you want to say bye to everybody?
Yeah, goodbye, everybody.